So let's talk about Bitcoin and privacy. This is a very important topic for most people. When Bitcoin came along, the talk was Bitcoin offers its users high levels of privacy. And this was, in fact, used by those who didn't like Bitcoin for whatever reason, as the reason why it wasn't supposed to be allowed to get into or to be used by people. In particular, regulators and law enforcement and other people thought that Bitcoin was giving criminals, it was something that criminals will find very useful, that it offered criminals a way to receive and send and keep money without being uh, scrutinized. Maybe that's not the right word, really, but yeah, you get the point. Um, so everybody came, or most people, or many people came into Bitcoin without understanding, or that without belief that Bitcoin is very private. Nobody will know what you are doing. You just do your thing. But that understanding was erroneous to some extent, at least. It turns out Bitcoin is private, yes, but it's not automatically private. As an individual who is using it, you have to take some steps to keep your activity away from praying eyes, if you know what I mean. And the reason is this. You see, Bitcoin, like any other online payment method, relies on a ledger. Every transaction is recorded on a ledger. Um, what someone owns is recorded on a ledger. In fact, it is the ledger that is known as the blockchain. Maybe you've heard of blockchain. Blockchain is basically the ledger on which Bitcoin transactions are recorded. And yeah, with the other online payment methods, let's say, for example, PayPal, or even wire transfers with the banks, online kind of payments, or online banking, or even just normal banking, there is a ledger there. Like the bank keeps a ledger, or the financial institutions keeps a ledger that indicates so and so owns this, so and so owns this. When you transfer money, then they have to change the details of that ledger to indicate that you've taken this amount from your account and send it to this account. So let's say most payment services rely on a ledger, and Bitcoin also, just like these others, also has a ledger, and the Bitcoin ledger is what is known as the blockchain. Now, with the other payment methods, especially online payment methods or the banks, the ledger is managed and controlled and maintained by an individual entity or a centralized organization. Yeah, that organization acts through its agents. Could be the machines like an ATM. An ATM machine, of course, also records on that ledger that you've withdrawn this amount of money, or you've deposited this amount of money, or the teller, the banking hall, who will accept your deposits or give you money, and then they have to update that ledger. Now, with Bitcoin, there is no such, the Bitcoin ledger is not maintained by a centralized organization, or there is no company behind it to manage that ledger, either directly or through agents. What happens is there are thousands of computers that are put into use, or put into the network by individuals who are incentivized through the reward that comes in terms of what you hear as they call it mining. And these individuals are just private people. Even you can just set up a machine and put it on the network, and the machine will be doing the job of helping maintain the ledger, the blockchain, and in return you get paid some bitcoins. So that's what happens with now with the Bitcoin ledger. The blockchain is public. Anybody with access to the computer can access that ledger. With a bank, the ledger that is maintained by a bank or by PayPal, you don't have access to that ledger as somebody who is not part of the organization. And even within the organization, maybe not everybody has that access to view the entire ledger. It's only a few people who have that access. Now, you see, that's the difference. Now, the centralized payment systems safeguard the privacy of users by limiting access to the ledger. Now with Bitcoin, there is no limitation to the access of the ledger, the blockchain. Everybody can see it as long as you have access to the internet and you know what to do, where to go, the software to use. You can read the ledger and you can see in real-time transactions. Now that means when it comes to Bitcoin, there is something else that has to be done to protect the privacy of the users. Already the way it is designed is already designed so that the users are, even though the ledger is publicly available, the users are still private. And this is what happens. You see, with the centralized payment system, you have to share your identity, real world identity, your name, your address, even your image have to be attached to that account. And that means if somebody accesses that ledger, let's say a ledger that the bank maintains, they are going to see nearly everything about you. They are going to know your full name, the number you're given as an identity by the state. They are going to see your picture, your photo. They are going to know where you live and things like that. A lot of information is there. Now, when it comes to Bitcoin, there is no real world information that you need to share to use the service. Instead, what you do, you create an address, a virtual identity. And this virtual identity is a string of alphanumeric numbers and letters that I think they are, alphanumeric numbers and letters that are up to 30 or 35 letters that form a string, and this becomes your address. And that's everything about you that will appear on the ledger, of course, with the amount that you send or receive. And that means if as much as people are able to see the ledger that is publicly available or accessible, that's the blockchain, they can't really tell who is this and who is this. They are just seeing these strings of alphanumeric numbers, and of course, this address has sent this amount of Bitcoins to this address. But these addresses, there's nothing that links those addresses to the real world identity of the people who are using them. And that is now where the privacy comes from, that you can, while this ledger is publicly accessible, you as an individual, you create an identity that only you knows, and the person who you are sending the Bitcoins, or the person who is sending you the Bitcoins know. Other people just see numbers and data that does not really make sense to them. And that's where the privacy comes from. But now, there is a challenge, or there is something that you need to consider. That is not, that's turning out to be not enough. That initially that was enough. You will sit back and feel or be comfortable that nobody's going to know that I sent somebody $1 million using Bitcoin, or I've been sent $1 million, or whatever amount that you are likely to send or to be sent using Bitcoin. Over time, some people have built tools, and these tools can be used to look at that address and to find ways to link it to the person who is using it. And how those tools work, most often there are points where the on-ramp and off-ramps, where you buy the Bitcoin and where you sell it, that can be a source of information about you. So if I create an address right now, a Bitcoin address, and I give it to you or to somebody to send me Bitcoins, okay, maybe not that. That might take a while before it is figured out. Let's say this, I create a wallet and I go onto an exchange and I buy Bitcoins. Now, when I go into this exchange, especially a centralized exchange, the exchange is going to ask me for my name. They want me to sign in with my email address. They want me to provide my address, and all that information is called the KYC, and they keep that information. Now, these tools are likely to get that information. Now, through that information, of course, I have this address, I buy Bitcoins, I send myself to that address from the exchange. Already, I have left a lot of information about myself on the exchange. Now, when these Bitcoins are coming to this wallet is going to be linked to my real world identity that has been established from the exchange. And now this tool can share that information with other people, and they will know, okay, now on the blockchain, my address will cease being just an address, but somebody will be able to link it to my real world identity because they picked that information from mostly an exchange or somewhere else, some of these places where you'll go and you'll be asked to provide information about. And that's why many people are very are not very happy when they are asked to share their information when they buy or sell Bitcoin, because they know that's what's going to happen now. Your identity is open, because now from the information you share to the with the exchange, you are likely now to go. Somebody is likely to go and use that information to link your transaction um, on the blockchain to you. But there are things you can do to make yourself still private. For example, don't use the same address over and over and over again. Like for every payment you receive, you create a new address. The good thing is the Bitcoin protocol allows you to create as many addresses as you want. There is no limit to how many you can create. So it's possible for you to create one for every transaction or every payment you receive, and that kind of reduces, because if you use one address again and again and again, then you are making it easy for those tools to track and to identify you. But when you use so many addresses, yes, they can, but at least you slow them down. So you get one address, and then again, you can also, even though this cannot really, like, you can't use it and be so sure that you've really made yourself or your transactions to be very private. Once you buy from an exchange, for example, move it to an address, move it to several addresses, or the money, I mean, the assets, you move it to maybe 3, 4, 5 addresses, and then the tools might not be really know whether those addresses you sent to are your other addresses or they are addresses of other people. Now there will be that confusion, which is good for you and for your privacy. So don't just buy and keep it in one address. You can buy, move it to this address, move it to along to several addresses, at least create this, a little bit of confusion to anyone who's trying to track you down. And also, you should also use wallets that are you have full control of, because some of these wallets you might think you are using, they force you to share information. For example, if you just use the Coinbase wallet, it's a very good exchange. If you decide to use the wallet they give you, then of course on Coinbase you already shared your information. Then some tools can be able to collect information about you and share with others. So always move your assets to wallets that you have full control of, so that because those wallets don't require you to share any information really, especially those ones that don't require you to sign in using your email address. Those are the good ones. But if you have to use your email to sign in and then share your information, name and things like that, then of course you are putting yourself at the you are making it easy for others to find out about your dealings. The other thing you might need to use is mixers when you are sending and receiving payments using crypto. And mixers are these tools that you send a payment to, and then before that payment goes to the address that is intended, the addresses are changed in the middle. So that makes it hard for anybody who is trying to track that transaction to find out where it's really going. They might track it from your end when it reaches the mixer. Then from there, they now don't know, because the mixer is dealing with so many transactions, and they getting some of these transactions and giving them new, or all of them giving them new addresses. So that makes it very hard for whoever is following to track you. But you have to bear this in mind. Some mixers might be a con game. They might not really be doing what they tell you they are doing, and they just want you to pay because you pay them some fees. And again, some mixers will make things worse for you, because especially if they are centralized mixers, you send to a centralized mixer. Now that makes it easy for somebody else to collect information about you. So some mixers, while you might think you are doing things to make your transactions more difficult to be tracked, but turns out you are exposing yourself by using those mixers. So don't be very careful when you are choosing a mixer to use. You should preferably use decentralized mixers, but still you have to do your research, do due diligence, because the fact that they call themselves mixers does not mean that they are going to give you what they promise you to do, what they promise to give you. Yeah, so those are some of the things you can do to keep your privacy. Yeah, so the big thing to know is that the the ledger is accessible, the blockchain is accessible to anyone, and you also need to know that especially the on-ramps and the off-ramps are likely to leak your personal information, and that personal information can then be linked to your transactions on the blockchain.